Tiffany Moon, welcome to the LEANOUT podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
Really happy to have you. I'd like to start by asking you to introduce yourself for people who don't know you, maybe don't know what you do, and talk about your work life balance and how it's different from other people in your chosen profession.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany Moon. I am a board certified anesthesiologist, an author, a mom of twin girls, and an entrepreneur. Some of you may remember me from a show called The Real Housewives of Dallas, or maybe you've seen me on social media. I was a board certified anesthesiologist working in an academic medical center for 8 years full time. And then I cut back to part time, which was 4 days a week. And then a year after that to 3 days a week, which is where I remain currently. So I do still practice clinical medicine, which people seem to be shocked to hear. And I run multiple businesses. My husband and I own a wine business called Three Moons Wine. I have a bespoke candle business called Aromasthesia Candles. And more recently, I have founded a women's leadership and empowerment conference and summit called Lead Her Summit. So there's a lot going on outside of the operating room, I suppose.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love the just breadth of different things that you have done over your life and over your career to this point. And I also think it's commendable and amazing that you are still practicing, despite the fact that you have all of these businesses and successful endeavors going on outside of medicine. You recently also published a book, and that was called Joy Prescriptions. I loved the book. It's almost like a mix of a memoir with personal development.
Yes.
And I want to start by asking you what prompted you to write this book? Why did you decide to write a book now?
Well, I started writing it like 3 years ago. The book publishing world is very slow. For someone who does a lot of social media where I film something, edit it, and then send it out into the world, publishing is the exact opposite. It is so, so slow, especially with traditional publishing, which is, what I did with the publishing house. I wanted to write the book because I had a lot of life experience that I wanted to share with other people. And there was no good platform for it because social media, you kind of have to have these bite sized clips. And it was hard to get deep and tell these life lessons in like 60-second TikToks and Reels. And oftentimes I would go and give talks across the country, sometimes about medical topics, but more often about work-life balance or rediscovering joy or overcoming perfectionism. And after I got off the stage, I always had young men and women come up to me and ask me, "Oh, how did you deal with this? How do you deal with the haters? Oh, I want to start on social media, but I'm scared. Oh, I also am overcoming perfectionism," just all these things. And I thought, I want to write a book someday and share the lessons that I've accumulated throughout my life with other people. So that's how the book came about. And the reason it's called Joy Prescriptions, as you know, Dawn, since you've read the book, is because at the end of each chapter, there is a joy prescription that I write for the reader.
Yeah, I love the idea of giving action items at the end of each chapter, something that someone can explore for themselves and see themselves in your own story. And I love the word joy. It's my daughter's middle name, actually. And the distinction that you make in the book, too, you talk about true joy versus joy interrupted. And the idea that, especially in medicine, we have a lot of negativity bias, which is helpful to us when we're trying to keep people alive and safe, but it takes away from joy in our personal lives. So, what does joy mean to you? Talk a little bit about how to find joy.
I think for me, joy is transcendent and it's a state of being and not necessarily a feeling. I think sometimes we think about happiness and it's very circumstantial. Like, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if. And it's like predicated on something else. Whereas joy comes from within. It's not based on external factors like who you're with or what you have or what degrees you have on the wall. It's like a state of being where you feel content with yourself. you feel like more often than not, you are achieving your life's purpose. You're surrounded by people who lift you up rather than bring you down. It's sort of like living that intentional life where you feel grounded and able to serve in the capacity that you want to.
Yeah. And to me, it seems like through all of the adventures that you've had, that a common theme for finding joy was going outside of your comfort zone and doing something that was new or unexpected.
Yes, exactly.
So, some of those things you talked about starting businesses that are unrelated to medicine, doing things on social media that maybe some people think are unprofessional, like talking about skincare, for instance, which we have a mutual love of skincare and beauty, by the way. And stand up comedy, being on a TV show, all of those various things. So, how has doing something that was scary or uncomfortable contributed to your joy?
I mean, I always say you grow when you're uncomfortable, right? Whether that's in your personal life or in your business, you tend not to grow and learn when everything's going well. Generally speaking, the big life lessons, at least for me, happen when something shifted away from homeostasis, right? Is when I had to like really figure things out, both in my personal life and in my businesses. But my old way of life was to basically try to be perfect all the time. And so it kept me from trying new opportunities because I didn't want to, look like I didn't know what I was doing. And so basically, it kept my life like very small and very black and white. And through my therapy and coaching and podcasts and books, I really learned how to take imperfect action and that perfectionism was just a facade anyway, and that like no one actually really cared that I was perfect. And so I started taking more chances. And that's when I feel like life opened up to me in color rather than black and white.
Yeah, I love the idea that joy comes from letting go of perfection and that perfection keeps you small and keeps you playing small like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your origins and the beginning of your life and trying to be perfect. And one thing that really struck me in your book was you had a quite tough childhood with immigrant parents really just kind of growing up quickly, not being able to be a kid in some ways. And I heard you mention in a couple of different interviews, and also you talk about this in your book, that you didn't really feel intrinsically worthy or like unconditionally worthy. So, how did this change for you over the years? How were you able to find that worth within yourself?
Oh, that was like years of therapy. um I think when you grow up in a strict immigrant household where the love and attention and care seems to be predicated on your outcomes, that it's very common for people like us to grow up not feeling worthy because I was basically told in no uncertain terms that I was the sum of my achievements, right? I never felt like this unconditional love from my parents, that I tried to make sure my children know. But I always thought like, oh, if I don't make straight A's, like mommy and daddy will not love me anymore. They'll be angry at me. They'll be disappointed at me. I'll have embarrassed them and like embarrassed the whole family. And so I grew up with the very distinct belief that I was only worthy as my achievements, like how many A's I could bring home, how much money I could bring home. I mean, I joke sometimes that I am my parents' retirement plan, like I'm the 401k. And I think in talking to a lot of other people that this is not a isolated circumstance. Like I have friends that are Jewish, Nigerian, Iranian, and they're like, "Oh, we all have the same parents." Like, you know? I just think it's that mentality of that generation that sacrificed everything to leave their home country and come to the United States, the land of opportunity, right? To give themselves and their offspring the chance of a better life. They had immense pressure put on them too.
Well, in dealing with that pressure and all of the therapy that you've gone through, all of the lessons you've learned, is there anything that sticks out that really helped, really moved the needle for you that you've done practice-wise or mindset-wise?
I would say, when I had children is when I really started to take this seriously because I thought my children are going to look at me and like I'm the role model for them. And I don't ever want my children to feel like they're only the worth of their achievement. But in many ways, I didn't know how to undo all that learning, that I had learned as a child. And so I was very intentional about how do I restructure my home in a way that my home is filled with love and joy and creativity and curiosity and not just like, oh, what did you get on your math test or study for the SAT? You have to get a perfect score or go to the best college, go to medical school, all those things. And I think that was the real push for like why I started to change. And then, lots of therapy and my therapist would ask me like, tell me about your friends, tell me about your husband, your children, your pets. Why do you love them? And I would be like, cuz they're my children, they're so sweet. And she was like, but why is it that you can love other people because of who they are and the joy of being around them, but you feel like you're only worthy when you're doing things for other people?
Mm.
And I was like, I don't know. Like, I I guess I was just sort of conditioned that way. And so it took, I think, several years of unlearning um to arrive at where I am now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a quote in the book actually that I wrote down I wanted to read and ask you about, and it was, "I wanted to prove that being a good doctor and a good mom are not mutually exclusive." Which is riffing on what you're saying, but also related to our work. So how has your idea of what being a good doctor is and being a good mom is, how have those ideas changed since you've had kids? Because now your kids are 11.
Yeah. Well, I used to think the two almost were mutually exclusive just because there wasn't time enough in the day to do both. Not because there was a lack of want or effort or desire. It was just there's not enough time in the day because I define being a good doctor and being a good mom as like being there all the time, like never missing a single play, a recital, a parent teacher meeting, all that kind of stuff. But when you're an anesthesiologist and you're on call, and it's very difficult. I missed a lot of things when my kids were younger, particularly back when I was full time as an academic anesthesiologist and also had a position in our residency program. Like I was busy. I was at the hospital 50 to 60 hours a week and raising twin toddlers. And I just always felt like if I was at the hospital, I wasn't being a good mom. And when I was, spending the weekend with my kids, that like I wasn't, writing my research grants and flipping through ERAS applications and all that stuff. Like I always felt conflicted, like no matter what, that I was letting someone down. And that is a crappy, crappy way to live life because I basically felt bad all the time, no matter what I was doing. And what changed was a mindset shift that, like, oh, I don't have to be there for every single thing in order to be a good, like, who defined that? You know what I mean? And then I also cut back at work, which people are like, oh, cutting back at work, it's not a big deal. But it was a big deal to me because I was on this trajectory to be this like high powered, academic person publishing on all these national committees, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of knew in my heart of hearts that when I went part time, that I was going to fall off that star trajectory, that the slope of my career was now going to flatten. I understood it. I had seen it happen time and time again to other women in our department. So it was a big deal because I felt like I had, worked so hard in my life to achieve this, and now I was gonna let it go. But if I didn't let it go, if I didn't lean out and work, my personal life was gonna unravel. My marriage suffered, my relationship with my children suffered. This was all around the time when they were, I would say, 0 to 5.
Ugh,
And
that's a hard time too.
I know, and people are always like, "They're only little ones, you can never get that time back." Like, I remember my one of my girls having a fever and was, like, throwing up, just, kid cold thing, and I left her in the care of my nanny and went to work because I thought that, if I called in or whatever, people would be upset at me or say that I wasn't as serious about my job, that kind of thing. And it's so stupid. Like, in retrospect, it's so stupid. I should have just called in and been like, my kid is running like 104 fever. I'm going to stay home with her. But back then, that's not how my mind worked. I was like, oh, well, whether I stay with her, the nanny stays with her, she's going to get Tylenol, get some fluids. Like, if anything worsens, they'll call me. Like, I just was so matter of fact about it. And now I look back and I'm like, ugh, I can never get that time back. Like, it's gone.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing is really not uncommon among women, for sure. Physician women, it's always like you feel either like you're not measuring up at home, in your home duties and in your roles that you have with, wife, mother, those things, or you're not measuring up at work. And I have
Mhm.
a coaching client right now who is going to take a little bit of a sabbatical between jobs. And she's like talking about how she needs to read up and study because she's going to go to an academic job or something. I'm like, hold on, what is it that makes you think you need to read during your time off? Maybe there's some other thing that that you want to do that's like a joy inducing activity, or we're working on this, identifying, because the default is, oh well, I'm behind and I need to catch up and learn, the new area in my particular expertise of medicine while
Right.
I'm off.
Yeah. It's because the skills those are the skills that have gotten us to where we are
Mhm.
today, right? Like, if we didn't go the extra mile, like, my friends in college were, like, backpacking through Europe, and I was working in a developmental physiology lab trying to pad my CV because I knew that I needed research experience to apply to med school. You know what I mean? Like, these are the skills that got us here, but I think they no longer serve us.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned going part-time, and, also in the book, you talk about how the Real Housewives of Dallas, your stint on that TV show, really ultimately prompted you to take action and take this work-life balance into your own hands and step down a little bit in your hours. So talk about that and kind of what that experience was like.
Um, when you join a show like Real Housewives, you have all these behind the scenes meetings with the producers, and they grill you about everything in your life. They're like, "Tell me about your relationship with your parents. Do you have any siblings? How's your relationship with your husband? Do you guys ever fight? Tell me about your children. What kind of things do they like?" I mean, you just have to, like, divulge your entire life, and they're taking notes, and they pick out little things that, like, ring bells for them, that they think will be interesting to feature as your quote unquote storyline for that season, right? Because you have to have some sort of storyline. It can't just be like random all the time. So the thing that they decided to make uniquely mine on the show was this work-life balance, feeling torn between, a career and a family. So they picked up on that, and they wanted to know more about that. And they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, ideally, I would love to go part-time at work so that I could spend more time with my children, and, the house was a mess and all this stuff." And they were like, "So why don't you?" And I'm like, "Because I'm on this, like, superstar trajectory of my career, and if I do that, I'm gonna fall off that growth curve and, like, onto a different percentile." And they were like, "Well, it sounds like you have some decisions to make, some soul searching to do." And so that was all the, like, work-life balance stuff that, happened. A lot of it was actually off screen, And then you got to see a little bit of it with me having a conversation with my husband on the show. And then, ultimately that season deciding to go and ask my chair to go from full time to 80%,
Wait,
which,
they had that on the show? I
um,
haven't watched it. I have to admit, I haven't seen it, but
oh, you don't watch it. You're not missing much. I'll just tell you the synopsis. There was a long conversation that I had with my husband about it.
oh,
And then
okay.
I went and had my meeting with the chair, and then I came home and talked to my husband again about it, but they didn't film like the actual meeting with me and my chair. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the Real Housewives of Dallas was a blessing and a curse in many ways. But I'm kind of glad that the producers picked up on that and sort of, you know, gently nudged me to have that meeting with my chair because honestly, I don't think I would have done it then. I think I probably would have waited another year. Also, that was like right in the middle of COVID. And I'm like, I cannot ask to go part-time, like in the middle of a pandemic where they need me. You know what I mean? But it's like, deciding when is a good time to have a baby. Like it's never a good time. It's always, well, this and that, and so it's like I'm just gonna go for it. And the fact of the matter is I asked to go down to 80%. It's like 1 day a week. It's not even that big of a deal. But to me it was.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned in the book how once it really happened and you had worked up all of the confidence to go and mention this to him that it ended up not being as big of a deal as you thought. Like they
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, it's okay, all right, fine.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, come to me and they need help negotiating something. And then the anticipation of the thing is a lot worse than the actual thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to start the Lead Her Summit because this year, this fall is going to be the second one. So, what prompted you to decide to hold your own women's conference?
When I first started my candle company, which was in 2020, I basically learned how to run a business from scratch. I was a biology major. I had never taken any business, marketing classes, none of that. And it was so hard. And I messed up so many things. And I learned by going to conferences, listening to podcasts, reading books, finding good mentors. And over the span of several years, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I might know what I'm doing now. And then with social media, that was a huge learning curve as well. And so I wanted to build a conference for female entrepreneurs to kind of gather and share their ideas with each other, share their stories, and help amplify each other's messages. Because when I started out as an entrepreneur, it was so lonely. And I didn't really have a group of women that were doing the same thing that I was doing that I could talk to, bounce ideas off of, ask them like, "Hey, who made your website? Do you have somebody that does SEO? I don't know about any of this stuff." It's like you just have to like have a whole new education. And it's so lonely doing that by yourself. And so I wanted to build a conference so that we could like all get together and share ideas and lift each other up and, network.
Yeah, and that kind of thing is what holds people back from starting a business is just feeling like they have this inertia of not knowing and not having mentors and not having examples. And so that I can see would be very helpful for people who have ideas but just really can't take that next step.
Yes, exactly.
So tell us when the conference is for 2025. It's November.
Yeah, this year it's November 7th through 9th.
Okay.
Friday, it basically starts with a welcome reception, like happy hour, because the thought is that everyone flies in on Friday. Then we have programming all day Saturday. We have 3 meals, everyone's nice and fed. We have panels, breakout sessions, keynotes. Saturday night, there's a glam gala for us to let our hair down and have some fun, have some drinks, dance. And then Sunday, the programming ends at noon so that everyone can fly home and get back to their lives. So it's meant for the busy entrepreneur that kind of wants to cram it into a weekend conference. They don't have to take too much time off work or away from their families. But it's intended to be a really fun conference. We've got testimonials from last year's attendees, people just said that, they never felt that kind of energy in the room and they felt really supported. I think, by virtue of going to conferences like that, the audience already self-selects themselves for the people who wanna learn and who are interested in branching out of their comfort zone, right? But it was really amazing. Last year, we had almost 200 women in the room, and last year's theme was leadership because it's called Lead Her Summit, and then this year's theme is the business of branding because when I do my mastermind and my coaching with my clients, one theme that keeps coming up is how important it is to build a personal brand, no matter what area you're in, whether you're in medicine, law, real estate, finance. You have to have a strong personal brand these days because that's how people get to know you and your business. And if people don't know you, they certainly can't do business with you. And so I'm helping people build a strong personal brand so that they can take advantage of opportunities like book deals, podcast interviews, national media appearances, things like that.
Excellent. Super, super helpful for people. And you have generously offered a coupon code for the audience. I'm going to list it in the show notes. It's Lean Out is the code, and it's for $300 off registration. And there will be a link for registration in the show notes for everyone to take advantage of. So I want to know if tips for professionals who are listening to figure out activities or pastimes or interests that embrace their creative side and their funny side and getting away from always wanting to be that serious straight-laced professional. What's your advice for those people?
I mean, I always say you have to find your joy, and your joy is different from my joy, is different from someone else's joy. But when you are in a state of flow or joy, you know what it is. Like for my friends, they love tennis or pickleball or gardening. None of those things would bring me joy. I mean, it's bring me, miserableness. I love dancing. I love going out to try new restaurants. I mean, I love shopping, which is also my cardio. But everyone has different versions of joy, and I think we all need to stop judging each other for, our different recreational activities unless there's something, morally wrong with them. Everyone has different things, and, I don't know, I think we need more connection. I think it's a conundrum that we're, quote, unquote, "more connected than ever" because we have these smartphones in our hands, but at the same time, our rates of anxiety, depression, loneliness are higher than ever. Like, how can that be, right? Like, that there's a disconnect there, and I think it's because we engage in these superficial connections like social media, or small talk with people, but we don't engage in deep conversations, which take putting down our phones, which take time, which take listening, being vulnerable, sharing stories. I think that's what's missing right now. So I just want everyone to, I don't know, give each other a little bit of grace and every day try to find a little bit of connection with someone that you otherwise might not have.
Mhm. That's great advice. And I know that people will get a lot of opportunities to do that if they attend the summit. And just Tiffany, thank you so much for everything that you do. You really have a huge breadth of achievements that you have experienced over your life, but you're in this phase now, as I witnessed, that you're giving back to other people and you are giving the gift of the book and the conference and all of the interviews you do and sharing your wisdom, and it's beautiful. So I thank you so much for the work that you do, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was so lovely talking to you.